Hello and welcome to math class. I would like for you to go ahead and write down what you see on your screen in your notebook or on some paper. The lesson we're going to look at today is 8.5, the coordinate plane. Now for some of us today, this is actually going to be a review. You've talked about it in math class a little bit, and you also have been looking at this a couple times on your Math 5 a Day. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is we're going to make a coordinate plane in our notes, and we're going to first need to make a horizontal line. And our horizontal line, we're just going to kind of take all the way across. We'll trace the piece of paper on the line, and we will call this will be called our x-axis. So we'll go ahead and label, this is our x-axis. And then what we'll do is we'll make a vertical line. Vertical line will go straight up and down like this, making what we would call a perpendicular line. And this will be called our y-axis. Now you will notice where your x and y-axis have crossed right here. This is called our origin. So let's go ahead and point here and label this our origin. And this point here, if we would put the coordinates, would be called 0, 0. All right, now if it gets to the point where I'm going faster than you can go, please remember to go ahead and pause your video, and then you can kind of get caught up so that you have all of these notes in your notebook. So once again, once we look, we have the x-axis and the y-axis. They have intersected here at our origin. We notice that there are 4 different sections, and those 4 sections or regions are called quadrants. We're going to go ahead and label them. This one here will be called quadrant 1. And most of the time you'll see them labeled with a Roman numeral. And this one will go counterclockwise. This will be called quadrant 2. And that's how you do Roman numeral 2. If we continue to keep going what we would call counterclockwise, we would go down here and have quadrant 3. I've never really known why they used the Roman numerals to label the quadrants, so maybe somebody could find that out for me and let me know. In the last quadrant, we have 1, 2, 3, and to write a Roman numeral 4, we write it like this, an I and a V. Now, in order to plot a point and land in these quadrants, you have to have what we would call an ordered pair, kind of like our origin has 0, 0. In order for me to land in quadrant 1, we're going to put here, you have to have a positive number followed by a positive number. So we'd start here, go positive and positive. If my point is going to land in quadrant 2, I'm going to start at my origin. I'm going to go to the left, which would be my negative numbers. So I have negative numbers. And then I'm going to go up to my positive numbers. If I'm going to plot a point in quadrant 3, I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go to the left, which would be my negative numbers. And then from there, I'm going to have to go down, which would also be negative numbers. Last quadrant, quadrant 4, if I would want to plot a point, start at my origin, I'm going to go to the right on the x-axis, which would be a positive number. And then finally, I'm going to go down, which would be negative. And you've looked at some negative integers on lessons 8.1 through 8.4. All right, so what I've put in front of you is a coordinate plane. I have some graph paper. And you will notice I have a point T located on my coordinate plane. And what I need to know is I need to know the ordered pair for point T. So if you notice, I'd like for you to draw in your notes the X and Y axis. Now, I don't want you to draw these coordinate planes, but I want you to go and draw these two lines, and I want you to kind of put a dot or plot a point here, T, in quadrant 4. And in order to find out where point T is, we start at the origin. And remember, the first thing we have to do is we have to go on our x-axis first. Well, in order to get to point T, if I'm starting here and I'm going to go on my x-axis first, that means I'm going to go this direction. And it looks like I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3. So I've gone over 3, and I'm going down 1, 2, 3. So I would say that point T is at 3, negative 3. If you notice, it landed in quadrant 4. So in your notes, you're going to have a T, and then I want you to have 3, negative 3. If you notice, what did we say? We said this is in quadrant 4. Look in our notebooks here. Positive number and a negative number gives me quadrant 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot another point. I'm going to start here at the origin, and I'm going to plot a point right here. And I'm going to call that point P. Now, I'm going to see if you can possibly look on your screen and decide, how do I go from the origin to over here up to point P? What is my ordered pair going to be? Well, let's look. Let's start here at the origin. I'm going to go to the left. Remember, these are going to be negative numbers. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So it looks like I'm going over negative 4. And from here, I'm going up 1, 2, 3. So my ordered pair would be negative 4, positive 3. This would be located where? In quadrant 2. So if you're putting things in your notebook like I asked, your notebook would look something like this. Okay, well, let's move on. So the next thing I'd like for you to write down in your notes is the title, Reflecting Points. Reflecting points. Some of you know what a reflection is. If you look in the mirror, you will see your reflection. Your face, the image, bounces back to your eyes so that you can see yourself in a mirror. So reflecting. We're going to talk about reflecting points. So in your math textbook on page 369, you have a picture here showing the scene of a mountain. You have the axis here that they put on the picture, and you will notice you have the mountain line, you have the sky here. This is a photo that shows a reflection of a mirror image of a mountain and a lake. If we could take this piece of paper and we would fold it on this axis, you would notice that the mountains and its reflection will actually both be exactly the same distance from the axis. Okay, so we're talking about reflecting. So here's our sun. If I'm going to reflect the sun over the axis, it's going to be across the axis, but it's going to be the same distance from the axis as the original image. So for example, let's go ahead in our notes, and we're going to go ahead and make our x-axis. We're going to make the y-axis. Okay, we have our 4 quadrants. We're going to plot a point -2, +4. So we're going to start here. We're going to go over about 2, up about 4, and let's just kind of pretend and put a point right here. It's called -2, +4 is my ordered pair. And if I would tell you this is my x and this is my y-axis, and if I would say we're going to take this point and we're going to reflect it. Sometimes they'll say reflect it in the x-axis. which basically means we're reflecting this over the x-axis. Well, if you notice, this is my x-axis. I'm going to take a little marker here and make it nice and dark. So that is the x-axis, and that's the one we have to go over. So if I'm going to reflect it over, that means I'm going to reflect it over here somewhere. However, if I'm reflecting it, it has to be the same distance. Well, if I went up 4 spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means here I have to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, approximately about right there would be my reflected point. What would my new ordered pair be? Well, I'm still going over to the -2. But this time, instead of going up 4, what did I do? I went down 4, like this. So my ordered pair would be -2, -4. Now, if you notice my two ordered pairs, since we're going over the x-axis, you will also notice that the x-coordinates stayed the same, and the y-coordinates became opposites. So if we took our notebook and we made a coordinate plane one more time, and this time let's go ahead and plot a point. Let's plot something over here in quadrant 1, and let's say that that is over 3 up 2. Let's just pretend that's where our ordered pair is. And if I would say we're going to reflect this in the x-axis, I'm sorry, here's our x. Let's do the x again. So we're going to reflect it here, and it's going to go over the x. It's going to land down here in quadrant 4. Well, if you notice up here, our x coordinate stays the same. So I'm going to guess that my point's going to go somewhere about right here. My x is going to still say 3. So I'm going over 3, but this time instead of going up 2, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to go down 2. So I have taken my original point and I've reflected it over the x-axis. And because it's reflected, it's the same distance here and here. So sometimes it's hard to reflect a point over an axis when you don't have graph paper. So these next couple of problems, I'm just going to have you follow along. You don't have to draw this in your notes, but I want you to look. I've drawn here my x-axis, my y-axis. I have given you the point -3, -1, -3. I started my origin, 1, 2, 3, and I went down 1. That's where my point is located. Now your textbook's going to say things like we're going to take this point -3, -1, and we're going to reflect it in the y-axis. A lot of times when I hear in the y-axis, to me that means we're going to reflect it over. Now if you notice, I'm not going to go up here because then I'm jumping over the x-axis. And I said we're going to reflect it in the y-axis. Well, here's why. And because this is my y-axis, I'm going to take this point and I have to jump over here. Now I have to make sure I jump exactly the same distance. And so I might look here and count back 1, 2, 3 places. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 places. And my new reflected point is going to be located here in quadrant 4. I've gone over to the +3. And I've gone down 1. If you notice, which number stayed the same? My y stayed the same. Why? Because I'm going over the y-axis. Same distance from the y and same distance from the x. All right, so the last problem I'm going to do is I'm going to put a point. Oh, let's put it way over here. I'm going to tell you to get to this point. Start the origin. I'm going to go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I went -6. And I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here is my point. I would like for you to tell me what is the ordered pair going to be if I take this point and I'm going to reflect it in the y-axis. That means I'm going to reflect it over the y. Here's the y. Could you tell me what the ordered pair is going to be? I think you're correct. So if I'm going to jump over here, that means I'm going to change my -6 to a +6 and a +5, which I just noticed I made that a -5, and that should have been a +5. Nice catch. So over here, I'm going over to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you notice, my y is a +5 after we got the mistake, and my x are opposites. So you guys are going to do some practice in class with this skill, and then your teacher will let you know what your assignment will be.